Hello and welcome to session 35 for the Abomination Vaults campaign diaries. Before we get into it, I did want to let you know that the Shiver story is coming to a close soon. There's going to be 3 episodes, 2 of them are already out, so that will be finishing soon. If you want to enjoy that as a complete package, you'll be able to do so pretty soon. This session is also going to be the last time we see Sesto. Not the player, just the character. For a while now, the player has been struggling with summoners. They took a bit of time off from the campaign, which left them feeling a little out of it in terms of the story and feeling engaged, and they wanted to make a change. So I obviously want my players to feel comfortable and feel engaged with their characters, so if Sesto needs to step away, then that is absolutely fine. So the plan for this session was for me to basically guide my players in the correct way to get to Jaul, where he could finish up his little backstory arc and then retire the character peacefully. This obviously included a little bit of railroading because I had to explain exactly which path my players needed to take, but they were very understanding and wanted to support Sesto's player, and as such, headed straight for Jaul. The plan was initially for them to kill Jaul and then for Sesto to retire, either because he wants to spend time with his family or because he feels like his part in the story is done. That is not what ended up happening. An important note for this session is that Milo's player was missing. Typically when a player is missing, I put their character to the side. I don't really like controlling players' characters, especially in dangerous situations, but the players knew that they were going to be getting involved in a pseudo boss fight today and they wanted Milo with them. So I ended up controlling Milo throughout the session, and because of that, some bad choices were made. But enough foreshadowing, let's get into the session. I directed the players to the chute in the refuse room and they headed on over. They could tell that this pipe was going to be steep and kind of dangerous to climb into, so they took a bunch of ropes, tied them together and sent them down the chute, and then one by one, they scaled down those ropes, bypassing the saving throws and the damage. This let them drop into a large watery chamber. This immense cavern is cold and damp. Water drips from the condensation above into a large, still lake. Thick patches of moist mushrooms, some nearly 4 foot tall, grow along the western shore of the lake, while a narrow trickle of water feeds in from a tunnel to the south. A 35-foot-long pavilion made of stone stands in the middle of the lake, elevated 10 feet above the water level by more than a dozen stone columns. The entire pavilion is encrusted with damp, pale fungus. 2 stone bridges arch from the pavilion, one connecting it to a door set in the northern wall, and another to a door in the east. A faintly flickering campfire burns in the middle of the pavilion, its smoke curling to the ceiling. Jaul, in his human form, sniffed the air and could smell a familiar scent in Sesto. Since we were trying to speedrun Sesto's backstory a little bit, I bypassed a lot of the nuance of this character and just made him blanketly evil. So he taunted Sesto and a fight broke out. I recognize that scent. Another morsel of meat come willingly to my territory. He looks across the group, his eyes settling on Sesto. You should know, I would have feasted on that old man had my companion not been harried by a deranged gremlin and a giant spider. Still, as you've come here willingly, I shall make a meal out of you and your friends. Jaul's flesh begins to stretch and tear, revealing black mangled fur beneath. As his bones crack and stretch, you witness Jaul take on his hybrid form and howl in anger and hunger. And then combat began. At the beginning of the fight, I wanted Jaul to focus on support a little bit from above on this platform, so he cast Summon Animal, summoned a second wolf, and his pet wolf jumped down, and that is the force that engaged the party immediately. The party obviously began focusing on these wolves, both the summoned one and the real one. Despite knowing that the werewolf fight was coming, they had left their silver weapons in town, so they would not be hitting the weakness, aside from Ornifex, who can use a silver coin and needle darts to hit that silver weakness. However, her attack rolls were pretty terrible, so not much of that weakness did end up getting triggered.
Oh. Okay, that was me.
Okay.
Oh my god.
Ooh.
Okay. I will try.
I believe.
Once more.
Oh.
All has been critical misses, and they're rolling really shit.
The summoned wolf did not last long, as it was a level 1 creature with pretty low hit points, pretty low armor class, and tiny, tore it apart in seconds. And then for a lot of the rest of the fight, Tiny, Sesto's summoned wolf, and Jaul's pet wolf went at it in such a savage, brutal way that it was bizarre to watch. The two wolves tore into each other with insane brutality, sometimes landing a full 3 attacks in a turn. It was an insane, ferocious, and bestial battle. Ooh, hit.
Nice.
Tiny just begins to maul the other wolf.
Damn, Tiny.
This is a surprisingly vicious attack from both the wolves here. Oh my god, he got all 3 of them! As some of the party moved forwards and some stayed back, Jaul cast a wall of thorns to separate the party from each other. However, May can deal a pretty substantial amount of damage, and she smashed through one of these wall segments in only 1 round. During this fight, the party were very good at countering Jaul's plans. Seeing that his wolf was getting ganged upon, Jaul did jump down and engage the party directly. He wanted to provide his wolf backup, but he also cast Magic Fang, which is essentially Runic Body, on the wolf. Tiny versus Jaul's wolf continued to brawl each other as the party decided that they wanted to get involved, and everybody seemed to focus the wolf, kind of leaving Jaul alone. The party had both the wolf and Jaul pretty well surrounded, and they were dealing a lot of damage, so Jaul decided to focus on healing. He used Heal Animal to essentially put his wolf back to full hit points, and then he turned on Tiny and he crit. This got Sesto very low in hit points, but otherwise the party was doing pretty great in this battle. There were multiple times where I would have Milo feint at Jaul, critically fail, and then just back away, because I didn't really want to risk that -2 to armor class. Eventually, the wolf landed a critical hit on Tiny, and with that Runic Body spell, it did put Sesto to dying too. And this, of course, caused Tiny to be desummoned. After losing his main target in Tiny, the wolf turned on the rest of the party and began mauling them and knocking them prone. Onfex obviously immediately healed Sesto, getting him back up, and the party continued to focus on this wolf, almost entirely ignoring Jaul still. He wanted to stop the healing that Ornifex was doing, so he targeted Ornifex with a lightning bolt spell. However, Sesto was still lying prone in the water behind her, and he was also clipped by this spell. Ornifex succeeded the save, so took half damage, but Sesto critically failed and took 54 points of lightning damage, sending him straight back to dying.
Oh my god.
There's this lightning bolt arcs across the room. Ornifex, you kind of dodge it, but it does like sparkle on your feathers, charring a lot of them. Sesto's lying in a puddle, and the entire puddle electrifies, causing him to spasm in the puddle, and he's left smoking and dying too. The party continued to focus on the wolf, but they did get it very low. Ornifex brought Sesto back up again, but he was now going to be at wounded too. Eventually, Gorgon managed to cut down the wolf, and then he cast Shield of the Spirits to try and keep Sesto safe, as the party were beginning to worry about him, and he was really the only person close to low hit points. Sesto stood up and drank a potion, trying to bolster himself, and Jaul was extremely upset by the death of his wolf and turned his focus to Gorgon. The group now began to focus on Jaul. Milo used his exploit vulnerability to start dealing silver damage, and they began to reduce his hit points pretty quickly. Sesto no longer had Tiny about to deal some melee damage, so he cast Animal Form on himself and turned himself into a bear. Then he rushed over and joined in the brawl. Part of the Wall of Thorns spell was still about from earlier, so Jaul shoved Gorgon into the spell, dealing damage, and then he cast a pretty substantial heal spell on himself. The party were pretty quick in getting back through these new hit points though. Ornifex copied the strategy that Jaul had used and cast Runic Body on Sesto in his bear form. And then the group managed to knock Jaul prone and all dived on him to deal as much damage as they could. Sesto took the chance to deal some really good damage with the bear form, and the fight was beginning to look like it was going to be resolved pretty soon. However, Jaul still had one final use of the heal spell, so he cast it on himself and returned himself to about 40 hit points. Instead of standing up, he lunged for Sesto, biting into him and dealing a pretty substantial amount of damage. The party continued to just batter his prone body, but he managed to withstand it. Eventually, Sesto critically hit Jaul, leaving him very low, And Jaul retaliated by standing up and missing all of his attacks. So this fight looked like it was basically over. The next hit was going to be a guaranteed kill. And this is maybe where I take a bit of blame for what's about to happen on myself, because the next attack was going to be a kill. And the next in initiative was Milo, and then it was the entire rest of the party, and then Jaul. I felt a little weird about having me controlling Milo get the kill, especially since this was Sesto's backstory and Milo's player wasn't here. So instead of attack, I had Milo try and trip him, which he failed to do. However, at the time, this didn't seem like a big problem because the entire party was still going to go, and any one of them could get the kill. Every single attack missed from every single of our heroes. Gorgon missed 3 attacks. May missed her flurry and consecutive attacks after that. Ornifex could not land her needle darts. Sesto's bear form missed everything. And it looped back to Jaul. With these more serious fights, I tried to make the enemies a little more dangerous and a little more petty. So since Sesto was the lowest hit points, it made sense that Jaul would want to finish him off. He attacked Sesto once. He hit. He attacked Sesto again. He hit. And then we had some over-the-table chatter, and I kind of forgot what I had done with my turn, and I thought I'd only attacked once. So I tried to cast Grease. Ironically, Sesto's player was the one that reminded me I'd already used 2 actions, so I could not fit a Grease spell in. So I just made one last attack, assuming, with multi-attack penalty, that this would be a miss. It was a natural 20, and Sesto was wounded 2, which meant Sesto went to dying 4 and was killed. The party immediately killed Jaul with the very next attack, but it was too late. Sesto was dead in the very session that he had planned to retire in. Understandably, the party were pretty shaken.
No, wait, is he dead? Are you dead?
He's dead.
Because you have dying 3.
Dying.
Dead.
You had dying 2, and that was a crit, so you add 2 to your dying value, so you're dying 4, which is dead.
What? No.
Max is going to be so upset that he's not here.
After having literally just resolved the rock situation, another death in the party hit very hard.
I'm gonna rush over, get on my knees. Ornifex, help him! You gotta help him quick!
Rush over and check on him. It will be clear I cannot help anymore and will just shake my head.
But I mean, this is what he was here to do, right? We did it. Sesto, we did it, hey? And tap his cheek. Can wake him up.
I will take him out of the murky water.
We can't do this again. We just resolved the whole rock thing. We can't have somebody else go. It wasn't meant to go like this. I just sit with my face in my hands.
I will have my eyes closed and say a prayer.
I am going to pick up Sesto's body, carry it in my arms, very gingerly. Let's take him home. He did what he came to do. He's at rest now.
In a somber silence, they took Sesto's body back to May's caravan, and then May ran to tell Rin what had happened.
Rin, it's happened again. Sesto, he... I'm just gonna stop crying.
You see her face drop, and she rushes up and takes you into a hug. What happened?
It was the werewolf, the one that hurt his dad. We went in, we found him, but Sesto didn't make it. He's out by the caravan. We need to tell his parents. Do you know where his family are?
Okay, I assume they're at home. Do you want me to go fetch them for you?
Yeah, I think so. I don't really know them. I think Milo's helping Gorgon.
Okay, I'll go look after things. You stay
Thank
here.
you.
Rin offered to go and fetch Sesto's parents, so as she set off, May returned to the group. As they mourned, the topic of Tiny came up, and the idea that he would never be able to return to the universe was actually a lot more upsetting to them than even Sesto's death. However, this line of conversation did give me an idea for a slightly more satisfying end to Sesto. They began to feel this energy, this presence of Tiny, desperately trying to force his way back through the veil to his friend Sesto. I had them all roll religion checks. And with pretty good rolls, they began to perform a ritual to help Tiny push back through to reality. But not for the reason they were expecting. In an act of friendship and sacrifice, Tiny offered up his essence, his soul, so that Sesto, if willing, could return. So I asked Sesto if he would accept this final gift from his closest friend and ally, making it very clear that if he does accept, Tiny will die in his place, and he will no longer be a summoner, no longer be a spellcaster, he will be a simple, ordinary commoner. This proved a very difficult decision for Sesto to make. You feel Tiny's essence, not his body, but his spirit, come through a small tear between the worlds that you can create. And in an act of sacrifice, Tiny gives up his own life energy to return Sesto.
No!
If Sesto is willing to accept
Don't
the
do
gift.
that. Why have you got to do that?
To fuck with your emotions. It is ultimately up to you whether Sesto is willing to come back and accept this gift from Tiny.
Okay.
Alright. As you finish this ritual, you feel this unspoken conversation between Sesto and Tiny. And in a deep inhale, Sesto breathes in, and his eyes slowly open, and the wounds on his body are heavily scarred, but almost have this like magical sheen across them. And Sesto is returned, but will no longer be able to call upon his eidolon or cast his spells, as the creature that gave him such abilities has sacrificed itself so that he could return. The party celebrated Sesto's return, but at the same time mourned for Tiny. Tiny was just as much a member of this party as Sesto was, so they still felt a pretty strong loss in this outcome. Soon after, Rin showed up with Sesto's parents, and they were all understandably confused. However, Sesto's parents were in a state of chosen denial and were very happy to assume that the party had just been mistaken and the wounds weren't as bad as they had seemed. Before Sesto parted ways with the group, though, and retired, there was one last thing that he needed to do. After the killing of Jaul, the party had quickly looted him and had found the necklace. So Sesto sought out his old friend Keelano and presented him with his wife's long-lost locket. Can I help you guys?
I've got some sort of big news I think you might be interested in.
Oh, aye? What's that?
It's going to hold out the necklace in front of me and offer up to him.
You see he sees it and freezes. Probably half a minute later, he finally reaches out and takes it and opens it up, and you see his eyes begin to water up. You found it. Thank you. Did you get the bastard then?
Look around at the rest of the party. Apparently so.
Alright.
If the person that had the locket is the person that, did what happened to your wife, then I'm pretty sure it's all dealt with now. At least you have some peace, some closure.
Yeah, thank you. Look, I wouldn't normally do this, but he sort of nods and turns and looks at the market. You've done something that nobody has been able to do for 30 years. I'm going to give you 20% off the entire market. Just forever. That's what this has been worth to me. You see, it's like his demeanor almost like breaks, and it's like you kind of realize he's been so grumpy this whole time because he's felt like hopeless, and finally, by getting this necklace back, you've broken down a wall he set up 30 years ago.
And if you want to go take off and have some time killing it, I'm sure I can get my father to come and help shut up the market for the day.
He pats you on the shoulder and gives you a rare smile. Yeah, we're going to go visit her. And he glances up at the graveyard. You handle things here for me. And he wanders off towards the graveyard. And that was it for Sesto. Sesto was an interesting character. Despite having a backstory that left him pretty ingrained in Atari, just like Milo, he seemed to struggle to find his place in the story, especially when he began to miss sessions for a while due to a new job. By the time he came back, I could tell that he fell out of the loop a little bit. He wasn't sure what he had missed or if the party were acting on information he wasn't aware of, even though we did obviously try and catch him up with the various different events of the story. I think Sesto had a lot of potential, but it was very difficult to act on that potential, both on my end as a GM and on the player side as not quite knowing where the story was going. I would also say that Summoner, even at the best of times, is difficult, but it's extremely difficult to play in the Abomination vaults in these tight corridors and small spaces. I definitely feel like Sesto was a missed opportunity on my part. I should have done more. By making his backstory content tied to Jaul, I was attempting to act upon the fact that he wanted Keelano to be his grounding NPC. But Jaul is such an isolated character that there was no build-up. I was also slightly limited by the fact that Sesto specifically didn't want his Eidolon to be able to talk, so I couldn't really have a stronger bond with Tiny, which I was originally planning. Before the adventure had begun, when I was pre-writing all of these scenes for different players, I had intended the Sesto story arc to be Tiny and Sesto becoming so infused with each other that begin not quite understanding who is the summoner and who is the Eidolon. But when Sesto made it clear that he didn't want Tiny to be anything other than a summoned wolf, that didn't make sense anymore, so I had to pivot to this werewolf arc. But all this has basically made me just want to try harder with his next character, who you will be meeting next session. As for the rest of the party, they had half a day left, and tomorrow was Boss Strong's wedding. They decided it was only right to bring a wedding gift, so they went out to the marshlands to capture some giant insects. I made a very quick giant insect randomized encounter table, and then they had some non-lethal battles against some bugs. And these were very easy battles, no one was ever at risk of injury. But they ended up coming away with 6 giant cockroaches and 1 giant stag beetle, which they dragged down to the Farmers Guild to look after and ended up having to pay 15 gold because the Farmers Guild is not equipped to deal with giant insects. But they'll be picking them up tomorrow to take to the wedding. And that was the end of the session. It was a lot more emotional and a lot more dramatic than I had expected it to be. It's strange, the player was always wanting to swap characters this session, but I actually felt worse about Sesto's death than Rock's. I think it's just because it was so unexpected. The fight with Jaul was going so well that I think people didn't even consider death was on the table. But all's well that ends well. He's very much looking forward to his new character, and I'm looking forward to you meeting them. So yeah, next session, new character. Again, there'll be a little bit of railroading because I've put him in a specific location to be found, so I'll need to guide the players there as quickly and efficiently as possible to stop that player from getting bored. Yeah, if you liked the video, then leave a like and subscribe, and let me know in the comments if you've ever had a character die in such an awkward, ironic way. You'll find my usual links to Blue Sky, Discord, Twitch in the description. But that is it for today. I shall see you soon. Bye-bye.